So, I want to talk about answering your craving for rest because this is one of the things that rest often becomes this casualty pushed aside in our never ending pursuit of productivity, achievement, always finding ourselves in this cycle of busyness. We become addicted to busy because we think we have to stay busy. And what ends up happening is we run out of gas. Our bodies are really struggling to keep coping with all the things we keep throwing at ourselves each day. And so let's talk a little more about rest, not sleep. Sleep is very different, and there'll be another training on that or area where you can go get some support here in this module. But rest is that lifeline. It's that breathes, energy and our vitality back into our weary souls. It rejuvenates our body and it rekindles our spirit. So if we don't have intentional rest, we really become shadows of ourselves. We run on fumes and we fade into the background of our lives. So rest is really about tuning into your unique needs, and it's experimenting with what works for you. And this is why I say so much learning to listen to your body. What is your body whispering that you need? So I want to encourage you here. There's a handout below. You can go ahead and print that. Again, you can grab a notebook and take some notes on this. I'm going to give you some questions, but I first want to describe, really, it ends up being 7 different types of rest. And I'm going to quickly go through these because I think when I explain these to people, to women especially, we don't always see rest as this way. So the first most obvious one is physical rest. This involves giving your body a break from the physical activity, and it allows your body, really, when we take that physical break, we allow our bodies to recover and rejuvenate. Now, this might mean eating a good meal, getting enough sleep, napping, practicing some relaxation techniques, maybe stretching or massage. But physical fatigue is often the first most obvious sign of needing rest. So the second type of rest is mental rest. And this is really essential for calming the mind and reducing our mental fatigue that we get. It involves taking break from these intense cognitive activities, such as maybe working on the computer a long time. Maybe it's studying or writing a book or engaging in different activities that really take a lot of our mental load. I was just recently talking with a client of mine who works in the finance area, and she said, I work with numbers all day and I'm in this intense mental exercise all day, and I'm finding I'm so tired by the time I get home. So we've talked about how can we take some mental rest there. And these are the things that we can look at and say, how can we feel more productive when it comes to things, and recognizing these symptoms? So thinking about mental rest, it's taking a break, such as anything that promotes your mind to relax. It might be something as strong as meditation or just mindfulness, of being mindful to step away from a computer. Mental rest is also giving us that break of always thinking and doing something that you enjoy, where you don't have to use that mental energy. So if you've experienced brain fog, you've had a hard time concentrating, these are the signs that your mind is tired and you need a break. So what is it for you that could be a mental rest? It could be sitting outside, enjoying the air, the fresh air. It could be a walk, any of these things. So that's mental rest. Our next kind is emotional rest. This focuses on acknowledging and honoring your emotions, meaning creating space for processing your feelings, allowing yourself to feel and express your feelings without judgment. A way this could look for emotional rest is journaling or talking to a friend. Self-reflection can be an emotional support where we use those skills to have that emotional rest, being able to lay it down somewhere else rather than feeling it in our bodies. I always say emotions need to work through our body. They cause a lot of dis-ease and it leads to disease. So thinking about emotional rest. The next kind is social rest. That involves taking time for yourself. Also reminds us to set some boundaries in our social interactions. So whether you're seeking solitude or you're stepping away from some social obligations, maybe you're involved in trying to find some recharging activities, maybe reading, alone time, practicing self-care rituals here. This is all about really deciding, do you need to be around friends, which that could be social rest too. Enjoying some time with family and friends, having some laughs, enjoying some fun and meaningful conversation. That's two ways to look at social rest. And I always think about, COVID and what we went through with being away or, maybe not being around as many people and feeling that loneliness. I talk about loneliness in our social connections portion of this module. So if you want to go check out a little bit more of how you can make those and create those social interactions better, that's a great training to go look at. Our next one is spiritual rest. This really encompasses finding your inner peace. It's rejuvenating. It's a deep connection with yourself, the world around you. It could be a connection to a higher power, God, whatever your belief is. It's engaging in activities. It could be prayer. It could be reflection time, spending time in nature. This really helps us. It allows us to quiet our minds, center our thoughts, and really find a lot of peace and calm in our present moment. So one of my favorite things to do with this particular activity is just having that quiet cup of coffee in the morning before anybody gets up, kind of curling up on the couch or going outside and looking at the birds and hearing the birds chirp, watching a sunrise. That to me it could be any of these kinds of rest, but that is what spiritual rest is a way to look at there. You'll see that these different kinds of rest, they can intertwine with one another. So what may feel like a good rest practice in one might be another. And if it keeps coming up, that's a great sign that that's how you enjoy to rest. The next area is sensory rest, and this refers to giving our senses a break. It's a lot like some of the other ones, but think about how overwhelmed we are in this sensory overload and the increased stress. It's really looking at what are the things that we're really distracted by and all the noise. TV, electronic devices. We're exposed to these bright lights and screens. This sensory rest is when we can engage in activities that really promote that soothing sensory experience. It might be taking a hot bath, listening to calming music, spending time in nature is another one. And this is really, we can talk about this if we wanted to say like a tech detox. Maybe you need a detox day. And that is when we feel like we are having so much thrown at us at times. And then I believe this is the final one, creative rest. This provides a space for our minds to wander and dream explore new ideas without that pressure of having to perform or productivity. So think about things like this. It could be art, it could be cooking, could be writing, painting, sewing, playing a musical instrument, really doing a number of different things. But the idea is that it's free flowing. I had a client say recently, I'm having a hard time thinking of things to do. Like, I don't have any creative rest. I'm not doing the activities that really light my soul up. And so think about, when was the last time you read a good book? Or when's the last time you picked up your paints? These might be different things, but finding what works for you. What is the thing that you recognize would be so awesome to spend some time on? And moving into this, I've given you on that idea of kind of a guide here is writing down some of these ideas. How do you like to rest? It really comes back to, what are your forms of rest? And then I have 4 tips that are included in this. These are the things to consider, and we want to think about first. The first tip is scheduling regular breaks. This pace that we go at every day, it makes such a big difference if we sprinkle these small bite size of rest, I call them the snack size, throughout our day. And this could be as little as just a couple of minutes, taking your time to go outside, reset, come back in, be able to concentrate. Doing different things like that, having movement could be a rest break, believe it or not, but it's a different form of rest. So asking yourself that question, I've mentioned this before, what do I need right now? And a lot of times we know our answers. We know what we would crave. That's why I call it craving your rest, answering your craving for rest. So tip 2 is find what works for you. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach. This is determine what works for you, what would light you up, what would be a great practice to really just start one step here. Tip 3 is embrace these leisure activities. One thing that I find that I hear quite often is we're so crowded in our days that we don't schedule any leisure time. So they can't, I mentioned this earlier, is I had a client say, I can't remember the last time I painted or played the piano or simply lost myself in a good book for sheer pleasure. So take a look at that, embrace this leisure activities, and this has a lot to do with our mindset. Are we allowing ourselves to rest, taking time for ourselves? And the final tip is pre-fill your rest tank. When was the last time you took a nap or took a break from what you're doing, like tanked up before you got to the point where you're simply exhausted? This goes with that approach of snack size and sprinkling it through the day, but pre-filling your rest tank so that if you know you've got something big coming up, you're actually doing this preemptive rest. And it's when what that means is you're strategically incorporating periods of rest or restorative activities into your routine before the stress or the fatigue becomes problematic. So this is a great way to manage that physical or mental health. It sustains us, and it really makes a difference in the quality of what we look at in our lives as rest. So there are a couple of questions now that I've kind of gone over all of these different types of rest and the tips. The first one is, what activities or practices make you feel most relaxed and recharged? The second question is, how can you incorporate these restful activities into your daily routine? Think about those, items that I mentioned, or those tips of snack size. We don't have to do a full 45 minutes or an hour. We can just do 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Sprinkle it in. The third question is, what's preventing you from prioritizing any restful practice? If you're finding it's hard to do this, what's standing in the way? What are the blocks? And then finally, how can you overcome those blocks, if you have any, to create a consistent routine of resting? So this is something to explore. Rest is one of those possibility generating activities. So we'll talk more about that in mindset, but find what works for you and just start small. 5-10 minutes and sprinkle one thing in your day. Give it a try, and then let's talk about it.